Hey everyone, Yarn here, and welcome to this week's Friday Makemup. This is where we take your comments and the daily prompts and we mix all up and see what we come up with. Just as a note of housekeeping, since we're still a new channel, we don't expect a whole lot of comments at the moment. So for the first month or two, we're going to just borrow from other channels and take those comments and use those to make our Friday Makemups. Seeing as how it's International Women's Day today, we wanted to go and borrow from a channel that was predominantly run by a woman. And couldn't think of a better place than Caitlin Doty. Love her work, love the Ask a Mortician series, absolutely wonderful stuff. So if you have a chance, go over and check her channel out. We did take a couple of comments from her video, Cruise Ship Accused of Keeping Dead Body and Beverage Cooler. Pretty interesting episode if you haven't had a chance to watch it, so there will be a link below in the comments. The first comment comes from Des Diamonds. I think that's how you say it. Des says, I'm from Puerto Rico, and let me tell you, she made the right choice by keeping his body on the ship. It's a huge pain in the ass to transport the dead to and from Puerto Rico. It's unfortunate the cruise line didn't take proper care. Comment 2 is from Pedantic Seal 4725. Pedantic says, I just had to put my dog down today, and I want you to know that the way that you talk about death is comforting. Thank you for the work that you do. Pedantic, if you're listening to this, I completely sympathize, and I'm terribly sorry you had to put your dog down. That is a very difficult thing to do. So our prompt for today was, it's International Women's Day. Who is an unsung heroine, historical figure, or otherwise that should be celebrated today? So taking all that and putting it together, did come up with something that is not for the kids. And actually, this is going to be the point where I put a trigger warning in and say we will be talking about dogfighting, and that can be a very challenging subject to listen to talk about. So if that's something that really bothers you, feel free to click off the video now. Once we get into the story, we will certainly be dealing with that. So with all of that out of the way, go ahead and sit back, relax, and here's a little story that we call The Veterinarian, the Captain, and the Dog. Here on Friday Makemups for I Just Want to Tell You a Story. Miami, Florida. Stunning beaches, vibrant nightlife, and beautiful skyline views. It also has one of the highest dog populations in the United States. This is the environment that Bella Chandler grew up in. Her parents were not wealthy, and they didn't always have the best places to live, but they always had dogs. It wasn't until Bella was a teenager that she understood why they always had so many dogs, and why they seemed to run away so often, which led directly to her becoming the veterinarian she is today. Bella's father, Tony, was a rough and strict disciplinarian when it came to his kids, but particularly when it came to their dogs. Her mother, Paula, was no better than her husband. Growing up in a harsh environment, Bella didn't know it any other way. Sometimes they had puppies, and not many of them stayed with the family for more than 2 or 3 years before they would run off. It was perfectly normal for her. Every Thursday, her father Tony would be gone all night, and occasionally there would be one less dog in the house the next day. Predominantly, they were pit bulls, but the breed did vary at times. Bella would fall in love with each and every one of them, and she would cry for days each and every time one would run away. On it went for most of her formative years. Sometimes she wasn't allowed to interact with them. Other times, they were a part of the family. Her father would call the ones that stayed in the house winners. When she was 14, she found out the ugly truth. Her father was running a dogfighting circle, and he was the lead trainer. At this time, they had 4 dogs in the house and 3 in the shed out back. She had her suspicions, but never knowing how life could have been, she never questioned it. This was the third house they had lived in the last 2 years. It was difficult moving from school to school, but her mother said it was for her father's work. She had 2 younger brothers, and they didn't seem to care if they went to school at all. Bella, however, she loved learning. She enjoyed biology the most and learning about animals. She had an inkling that she wanted to be a veterinarian someday, but had no idea how to make it happen. First, survive, then worry about wants. It was a Thursday night. Bella remembered it clearly. There were sounds of what had to be dozens of people stomping in the front room. She could hear her mother and father yelling, and at least 3 or 4 others she didn't recognize. Cautiously, she peeked out her door in the hallway. Across the way, her brothers were sneaking a peek as well, Aaron and Scott, 10 and 12 years old respectively. Down the hall, the kids could see their parents backed to a wall, with a throng of people shoving at them. Shouts of cheating and doping hung in the air. Bella wasn't sure what was going on, but she had some ideas. She looked to her little brothers. Aaron looked angry, but Scott was holding him with tears in his eyes. All the kids were scared to death, but could do nothing. Without warning, one of the men pulls out a knife and starts threatening Bella's father. Little Aaron screamed for them to stop. This drew the full attention of the mob to the kids. Bella's parents screamed for them to run. The men came streaming down the hall. Bella slammed her door shut and tried to hold it closed in a vain attempt to hold off the attackers. Very quickly, her door was kicked down, and she was dragged to the front room with everyone else. The first man walked up to her while the other men held her parents and brother. He held the knife to Bella's throat and yelled at her father about how he should put down the kids as payback for cheating at the dog fights. Bella quickly understood. All the things she had denied for years, all the late nights, the rotating parade of dogs, she didn't want to believe it, but the knife at her throat brought every suspicion to reality. She was mad, more angry than she had ever felt in her 14 years on this planet. How dare he hurt those beautiful animals? How dare that monster allow her to love them, only to have them taken away? And for what? So they could keep living in shitty, rundown houses, constantly on the move, to feed his ego? The next few minutes were a blur. A sudden burst of tear gas blasted into the room. There were sirens, red and blue lights strobed through the room. The man let go of Bella, and she could only crawl to her knees and try to get away. Cries and screams tore through the house. Then the gunfire started. Her eyes were stinging and watering uncontrollably. She wanted to run, to hide, but there was nowhere to go. She crawled as best she could to feel around her house. Refuge in her room or the backyard. There were stomping feet everywhere, and she was kicked more than once. A pair of hands grabbed her and hoisted her. She tried to fight it, but Bella was drained. She had no energy to fight. She could feel the chill night air as a policeman carried her to a cruiser and placed her in the back. Tears streamed down her eyes as the chaos ensued. She could hear more gunfire, but couldn't make out what was happening. The tear gas was still causing her vision to blur. Finally, everything went quiet, or at least there were no more shots. Rubbing her eyes with her pajamas, she was able to get some vision back. An officer approached the vehicle and opened the door. He asked if she was all right. Was she hurt? Bella shook her head no. The officer closed the door and assured her that she would be okay. This was the last time that Bella's family was together. Several gurneys were rolled out of the house, and she found out later that one of them was her father. Her mother was taken to jail, and they never had direct contact again. Scott and her were placed in different foster homes. Neither of them heard from Aaron again either. He simply disappeared. Bella Chandler came into the veterinary hospital early to check on one of the cats that had one of its legs removed after it had been run over by a car. It was a simple surgery, but its owners were planning to come that day to pick him up, so she wanted to be sure he was in the best condition he could be for them. After Bella had been placed in multiple homes as a child, she wound up in a halfway home for child victims. There she was encouraged to attend veterinary school. She was supported and encouraged in ways that she had never experienced before. More importantly, they also taught her how to be self-reliant. Her parents were gone forever. She needed to find her own way in the world after that night. Checking on the tabby cat. It looked like it was doing fine, purring and rubbing on Bella's hand. Not long after, her assistant Amanda was in the office. They made a great team. Amanda was a bit more impulsive than Bella cared for, but she was incredibly smart. Between the two of them, there were very few emergencies that they could not handle. Bella had grown a cold and distant demeanor, always thinking, calculating, looking for trouble and distancing herself from others. Amanda was outgoing and open, truly an oversharer. The Taylors came and picked up the tabby as expected. Nothing out of the ordinary. The mother had tears in her eyes as they were presented with their tabby cat. Bella sternly reminded them that it could have been so much worse, and to appreciate that they only have to pay for having their cat's leg removed, and not for a cremation. The tabby wasn't going to be able to take care of himself as well as he used to, and they should consider making him an inside cat from now on. Amanda chimed in and gave the Taylors some paperwork and got them on their way. They were staring daggers towards Bella. Afterwards, Amanda chided Bella for her bedside manner. She told her that she needs to work on her connections with humans as much as her connection with animals. Bella dismissed her and returned to the other patients that were waiting in the lobby. People only bring pain. This is what Bella believed and knew to be true. After all, it's Thursday. Nothing good happens on Thursdays. So it went for weeks and months. Occasionally, Edgar Grouse from Animal Control would call them out for some help if there was an animal that couldn't be transported to the hospital. All in all, it wasn't too bad for Bella. Every few months, she would hear from her brother, Scott. For some unknown reason to Bella, Scott had moved back with their mother after she was released from prison. Bella flatly refused to speak to her. So she and Scott would generally go for coffee, but that was it. It was a fractured relationship, but it was Bella's only connection back to her family. Still, after all these years, no one had heard from Aaron. Every once in a while, she'd swear that she saw him in a store or on the street, but with so many years gone by, she wasn't sure what he looked like anymore. Only the face of her youngest brother being held against his will in that house is what remained in her mind. One day, Edgar called for them to come out. It was a real mess, apparently. Some kind of hoarding situation where a woman had almost 20 dogs in a 2-bedroom apartment. There were a few that had pretty bad wounds, from what Edgar said, and would need to be treated before transport. When Bella and Amanda arrived, there was a circus of people running in and out of the apartment building, screaming about how they had been complaining for months and that no one would listen to them. There were cops and first responders of all kinds. This one was making the news for sure. Pushing through the crowd, Bella and Amanda made their way to the apartment. They could smell it long before they reached the door. Bella had been to plenty of hoarding calls, but this smell was different. Familiar. She clenched and went in. To her utter shock, it was an older lady. Bella half expected to see her mother sitting there. The smell of feces overpowered everything, but still, behind that veil, there was something familiar. It was the smell of decay, rot. The police were talking with the lady, and Edgar was milling about in the hallway to the bedrooms. Bella and Amanda joined him. He warned them. It was pretty gruesome. The smell grew stronger. It sent Bella back to her childhood. She didn't understand until she was much older. The smells in the backyard, in the shed, it was the smell of death, of rotting dog carcasses. And here it was again. It wasn't the first time Bella had dealt with it, far from it. But every time, the smell of rot would remind her of her childhood. A hell of an olfactory relationship to make. But it steeled her resolve. It made her angry. She wanted someone to pay. They stepped into the second bedroom where the smell was emanating from. Flies filled the space, and on the bed was some indeterminate number of dogs piled on top of each other in various states of decay. The older lady was screaming and crying from the next room about how all of her babies were gifts. It wasn't uncommon for some hoarders to collect pets as well, but this was unlike anything Bella had seen. At least something she hadn't seen since she was young. Amanda left almost as quickly as she had entered, audibly gagging and dry heaving. Edgar was so thankful that Bella was there. He needed her help. It was far too much for him to handle alone. As they slowly and carefully started bagging the bodies, Bella knew this was from dogfighting. But how it was tied to an older lady that appeared harmless was a mystery. Out they went, bag after bag. They filled the back of the veterinary van and the animal control truck. There was definitely more than 30 carcasses here, and Bella needed answers. After they had all of the live dogs secured and the second bedroom cleared, the police were ready to haul away the tenant. However, Bella wanted a word with her first. She asked for a few moments to talk with the lady before they left for the station. They allowed Bella to stand at the open door of the cruiser where the dog owner was handcuffed. It was difficult to see someone in such a fragile state going through what she was about to go through. Hopefully she can get the help she needs. There's no way they would send her to prison or general population. This woman had to be at least 80 years old and well past being in charge of her own faculties. Bella found out her name was Nancy. After some simple questions, Nancy let Bella know that the dogs were a gift from heaven. Years ago, she had lost her husband and needed companionship. Lo and behold, as she was walking home from shopping about a year ago, an injured pit bull crossed her path. It limped and was bleeding, whining as it collapsed on the sidewalk. So Nancy took him home. He only lasted a few weeks, though. Nancy tried her best to give the poor dog some solace before he passed. She couldn't handle losing any more loves in her life, so she put him into her spare bedroom. As the year passed, there was a particular part of the neighborhood that more and more injured dogs kept showing up. She would take them in and nurture them until they were gone. A few times, she would have to open a gate to let the poor animals out of the pen and yard they were being kept in. Nancy cried deeply. "Who will take care of them now?" she pleaded. Bella knew exactly what this meant. She asked Nancy where the yard was, but she could only give vague directions. It was most likely nearby, though. Bella told the police officers they were not interested, and reminded Bella that she just needed to dispose of the beasts and leave the policing to them. Clearly, they would be no help. She grabbed Edgar and told him the story. He agreed to help, but not until after they had taken care of all the dogs they had removed from the apartment. Bella felt that Edgar was putting her on, but she would get him to see her way. She was focused. She was not going to let another dog-fighting circle ruin another family if she could help it. It didn't matter if Edgar was going to help. Bella was going to find them. She needed Edgar, since he was the law, but Bella would not stop until they were caught. That night, Bella sent Amanda home and closed the hospital herself. She waited for Edgar. They planned on driving in his truck and scoping out the neighborhood. At least in his truck, they would have some authority when they went knocking on doors and asking questions. However, Edgar called, made some excuses about not being able to go, dinner plans, or some other such nonsense. Bella knew that he was a good man, but not a committed to his job type man. Not like her. She went on her own. She knew the signs better than anyone. What to look for, who to look for. That's fine. She works better alone anyways. Bella ran home and changed. She didn't want to stick out any more than she already would in that neighborhood. So a change of clothes, mace, taser, cell phone, she was ready. The first night, though, was a bust. Nothing that stood out. She was walking the streets until well after midnight in the same area as Nancy's apartment. It couldn't be far. Every corner she turned, every yard she looked in, someone had to be doing something to these poor dogs, and she would find them. Bella walked confidently. She knew how to handle herself in rough neighborhoods, but that didn't mean she was invincible, and she knew it. After more people were giving her attention than she wanted, Bella left. She'd be back tomorrow. The routine was the same. During the day, it was taking care of animals and researching the target neighborhood. At night, she would drive for hours, get out and check on any animals she saw. Edgar was no help. He wasn't interested in working overtime, and there was more than enough to keep him busy. Amanda, however, wanted to help. She was concerned about Bella trolling these rough neighborhoods looking for trouble. The kind of people that ran these kinds of dogfighting circles wouldn't take kindly to a veterinarian trying to shut them down. At the same time, Amanda was scared witless to go into these neighborhoods after dark, so she would stay back and try to coordinate things. Mark off houses and streets as Bella narrowed the circle. They had to find them. Maybe they left, which would make sense. Some crazy old lady snatching injured dogs out of yards. It was a weird story, but this was Miami. Anything and everything was possible here. So it may have spooked off the dog trainers. But a whole year of it? Maybe they thought she was helping, since she only grabbed the injured dogs. It saved them from having to dispose of them. Maybe they actually knew Nancy. Instead of Nancy bravely rescuing them, the trainers were actually giving them to her. Clearly, Nancy wasn't in her right mind, so perhaps they were taking advantage of that. But you don't trust complete strangers on the street with something like this. Maybe it was a relative. Bella asked Amanda if she was any good at finding people. She wanted to know if there were any relatives in the area for Nancy. Amanda laughed. She was in Bella's AirPods every night this week, talking, making sure she was okay. Amanda had already found a nephew that lived 2 blocks over from where Bella had been searching. Amanda did brag a little how easy it was to go through all of Nancy's socials, find people in the pictures, reverse image search, find their alternate accounts, track the street addresses in the picture, tie those back to Zillow reports and rentals. Easy stuff for her. Bella was more than a little perturbed by that, but appreciated the help. While out in the neighborhood and talking to Amanda, Bella stopped a couple houses away from the nephew. His name was Raymond. It was close to 10 p.m. now. It was dark, and not the best time to be knocking on a door. But she was so close, and it was a Wednesday. As silly as it was, not everyone would keep the same schedule as her father. But she felt if she didn't do something tonight, there would be more dead dogs tomorrow. Amanda asked her to FaceTime her and make sure that the camera was on the outer-facing one. Then put the phone somewhere inconspicuous and make sure that the light was off. Then Amanda could record whoever answered the door. Bella walked to the door with all the bravado. She wasn't scared. She was determined. This would end. No more pain, no more dog fighting. She would take down Raymond and anyone else that stood in her way. She knocked on the door, one hand on her mace, ready for anything. Several dogs started barking furiously from the knocking. Bella felt certain this was the place. A burly man answered the door while yelling at the dogs, then turned and asked what the hell she wanted. Bella tried to look around him to see if the dogs were injured. Sure enough, the two she could see were bandaged, one on the neck, the other on the front leg. They kept barking. The man grew angry. Bella wasn't speaking. He pushed her away, asking what she wanted. Why was she there? Was she looking for a boyfriend or something? Bella snapped. She doused the man with mace, then kneed him in the balls. He fell to the ground in agony. The mace stung her eyes and lungs, but not nearly as bad as it was for the man on the ground. She kicked him again in the nuts and stepped over him and into the house. The dogs were going crazy, but they weren't attacking her though. The entire scene descended into chaos. A woman and another man came flying from the back. They immediately rushed towards Bella. The man on the porch was up to a crouch, but couldn't stand. Bella told them to back off. She was there for the dogs. She'd held out the mace and threatened them again. The man lifted his shirt to flash a gun and warned her she was over her head here. Amanda had been screaming in Bella's ears, asking what in the hell she was thinking, and already called the cops. They were on their way. When the sirens came screeching around the corner, the two people in the house ran and warned Bella that they would find her. The police came in, guns drawn. The man on the porch was cuffed. Bella was cuffed. The dogs were corralled into the backyard while the police sorted it all out. It turned out that the big man was indeed Raymond. They both told their stories. Bella wanted him arrested for dog fighting. Raymond wanted her arrested for assault, especially the assault on his balls. The police brought them both down to the station. Amanda came down to post bail for Bella, but Bella wasn't giving up. She was causing a scene at the station. Raymond needed to be put behind bars and kept there. Finally, the chief of police came out and talked with her. He was a slimy-looking man, slicked back hair and a smile that would make a crocodile jealous. He introduced himself as Chief Sandoval. He told Bella that Raymond decided to drop the charges as long as she would leave him alone. Bella refused. She knew she was right. The chief pulled her in close enough that his fetid breath singed her nose hairs. He warned her more sternly that if she didn't want to see the inside of a prison cell, she would back off now. He'd hate for her to accidentally get put into the wrong holding cell where the men were less considerate than he was. Bella visibly bristled. She turned and looked Chief Sandoval square in the eye, said nothing, then walked away. Bella and Amanda sat outside the police station. They were both seething. They reviewed the footage that Bella had gotten from the phone. Raymond and the mystery couple were both in clear view. They could see the dogs, but not much else that was useful. The cops were no help, and they were probably on someone else's payroll. Animal control was well-meaning, but not equipped for this kind of thing. They figured all that was left was the FBI. Maybe they could help, but their hopes weren't high at this point. Bella tried getting through to the field office for the FBI. It was after midnight on a Wednesday night. There was no answer. She left a message. They could only wait. However, there was one more avenue they could try. Bella hated it with every fiber of her being. She knew it had legs, but it meant enduring a lot of pain. Amanda didn't understand. She didn't fully know Bella's past. There was a chance though, maybe, just maybe, Bella's mother would recognize one of the people in the video. The next day, Bella went to meet her mother for lunch. It had been 12 years since she had seen her. Since that night. It was something she believed she'd never have to do again, but her mother was eager to see her. Bella was less so. Opening that door again was going to be a temporary thing. It was only to find the dogfighting trainers. That was more important, and her mother owed her. She owed Bella this and so much more. They exchanged pleasantries as they sat down to eat. Bella paid, of course. Her mother didn't look like she had enough to rub 2 nickels together. Looking at her mother now, a broken woman, no prospects, no job, no career, Bella felt a true disdain for her mother. She not only allowed their father to run roughshod on the family, putting them through hell, her mother Paula was as guilty as her father when it came to dogfighting. She helped train, nurse the dogs, beat them, punish them. No, there was no love lost. And Paula kept looking at Bella as a meal ticket. It was pathetic. Bella showed her mother the video. With the fervor of a crack addict making a discovery, she said she recognized the one with the gun. Paula, overexcitedly, explained that he was a big roller. He went by the name the Captain. He ran a boating operation that had dogfights on a cruise ship from Florida to Puerto Rico. They had all kinds of other activities, hookers, gambling, but Paula and Tony worked with him a few times back in the day. She kept looking at her daughter for approval, some kind of reward. Bella tried asking for more, but her mother didn't know any more than that. The awkward and painful conversation was broken by a phone call. Bella felt relief for the interruption. It was the FBI returning her call. She stood up and excused herself. Paula had a feeling that Bella might not come back. She grabbed at her sleeve and asked her to sit down, to talk to her, not to go. Maybe Bella could help her out with some cash for helping? Bella looked at her, asked the gentleman on the other end of the line to please wait. A tirade of years of pain and anger was unleashed in that moment. Everything they had been through, everything they had endured. No child should have grown up that way. No one should be torturing dogs for sport. She was never a mother. She only cared about herself. Even now, she was a junkie looking for a fix. For the first time in many years, Bella cried. Tears streamed down her face as she let go of her composure. Paula shrunk back, scared of what her daughter might do. She looked longingly at the strangers surrounding them for some reprieve, but it did not come. Bella finished, turned, and walked away. She wasn't sure if this was the end, but if it was, that was fine with her. Pulling herself together, Bella returned to the call. The man's name was Agent Nicholas. He asked if he was interrupting anything. She assured him it was fine. Switching the call to the Bluetooth in her car, she let Agent Nicholas know everything that was happening as she drove to the animal hospital. He understood and sympathized with her plight. He had 2 dogs himself. But other than dead dogs in an apartment, there was nothing tying anything to Raymond, the mystery captain person, Chief Sandoval. It was all just hunches and guesses, nothing concrete. He did, however, let something slip, likely intentionally. The FBI had been after the captain for some time, but they could never catch him in the act, or come up with any witnesses. But they knew who he was. Agent Nicholas wouldn't give her the captain's real name, but assured her that they were watching him. Fine, another dead end. Bella went back to confer with Amanda. It felt like they were further than ever from getting justice for the dogs that asked for nothing but to be loved. Bella told her about the captain, the FBI. Amanda said that makes sense, his name was the captain. His real name was Carl Stevens. He was 52 years old. He owned a boat called Petite Mort, and that is moored in the Island Gardens Marina. He was into blondes and preferred nights out. Bella was flabbergasted. How in the hell did you find all that out? Simple, Amanda said. I found his Tinder profile. He was a real braggart, and just gross on so many levels. Look at his profile pic. It's him on a boat with like 10 women. Who does that for a dating app? And who names their boat after an orgasm? A plan was starting to form in Bella's mind. If she could weasel her way onto the boat, she could record the goings-on. The dogfighting, gambling, everything. Then the FBI would have to get involved. But how and when? Amanda, who had apparently read Bella's mind, showed her a few social media posts from some of Carl's less tight-lipped passengers. Looking at the frequency, Carl had a regular cruise from Miami to Puerto Rico every other Sunday. They even tagged their locations in the posts. Amanda was unimpressed. None of these people knew how to protect themselves online. All the better for her. This may have been the best Thursday Bella had had in years. She felt good. She felt ready. It was only a few days until Sunday, and they had work to do. The rest of the week flew by. It was simple enough to get invited on the boat. Amanda made Bella a fake profile on Tinder and swiped right on Carl. He immediately answered and very quickly got into the raunchy stuff. There was a tense moment where Carl had mentioned he might recognize her, but Amanda played it off that he may have seen her on OnlyFans. That sent the creep into a lustful tirade. Amanda strung him along until it was time to go. There was going to be at least a couple dozen people on the boat, and Bella wouldn't be the only woman on board for fun. Good. Maybe she could lay low at the others, distracting the rest of the passengers. Bella and Amanda bought some of the tackiest outfits they could find in Miami. They still had to hide a mini camera that could Bluetooth to Bella's phone, so the outfits were still relatively conservative for a pleasure boat cruise out of Miami. According to her cell provider, she could have service all the way to Puerto Rico. It's basically all roaming charges, but the cost will be worth it. Amanda would monitor from shore and get the footage to the proper authorities as soon as they had something. Bella planned on stealing one of the dinghies and hightailing it out of there as soon as they had what they needed. Worst case scenario, they would contact the Coast Guard if things got too hairy. It was risky, but it could work. The big day came. The cruise was 3 days to Puerto Rico and 3 days back. Bella hoped she was gone long before they reached Puerto Rico. They did a couple more checks on the equipment. Amanda threw a couple air tags in Bella's luggage too, just in case. Extra power packs, extra cameras. As long as they were within range of Bella's phone, they would connect. Bella would stream as often as she could to Amanda, but she would try to send a text first since there was no itinerary that said dogfighting at 10:30 p.m. every night. With that, Bella was off. It was the most vulnerable she had felt since she was a child. Off on a boat full of strangers that would do her harm if they knew what she was really planning. No one around to hear her scream, no one to stop whatever could happen out there. She was on her own. Bella met the party in the marina. There were people from all walks of life, and it was a little comforting to see so many women. She felt hopeful that she could blend in and get lost enough that no one would notice her. Boarding the ship, there were cheers and jeers from all kinds of men. She had her ass slapped more than once just getting on the boat. Then there were two very large men that were checking bags. Bella tensed for a moment, but they did plan for something like this. Bella had thrown a rather large vibrator into her luggage as red herring. It worked like a charm. The men saw it, smiled, and laughed. They closed everything up, saying something about how this was the right boat for her. Her skin threatened to crawl off of her body in protest, but she had a mission to accomplish. This was a good-sized boat. There were several cabins, and it seemed the girls were sharing 2 or 3 to a room. Bella set up and started exploring the boat. The crew gathered the guests to wave goodbye as they launched. Standing in a group along the railing, Bella recognized someone to her left. He wasn't hanging off the edge like the rest, but was definitely ogling the women from behind. Turning to get a better look, she was certain. It was Chief Sandoval. This game of hide-and-seek just got cranked to 11. The evening was off to a loud start. People were drinking in every area of the ship. Bella made her way around exploring, trying to avoid everyone she could. It was surprisingly easy. Most everyone was too drunk to care. She just kept to herself, not hiding, but not making eye contact either. Eventually she found where the dogs were kept. There were a couple of large men guarding the area the dogs were kept in. There had to be at least 24 dogs in all. They were all packed into small cages and stacked on top of each other. They whined and whimpered. Bella's heart broke for them. She had to do something before the fight. She couldn't let them get hurt. Flirting with the guards, they told her that tomorrow after lunch would be the first fight. They wanted to flirt and cavort with her, but she could tell they were more scared of something happening to them if something happened to the dogs. They suggested she go back above deck before anyone missed her, or go and see the casino. Walking through the narrow and cramped halls, there was a ballroom of sorts. Not very tall, but quite an open area. There were table games of all kinds, women in various states of undress. Bella texted Amanda that she was going live. She took a deep breath and walked into the chaos. Bella tried to get as many of the faces as she could on camera. She didn't see the chief or Captain Carl anywhere. Nevertheless, she kept going, stopping and chatting with everyone, making sure that the camera captured everything. Craps, poker, there was even a small table with a screen for betting whatever sports event happened to be going. The amount of cocaine and drugs freely being passed around was shocking and unnerving. These people really felt safe. No cares in the world. There was a sudden commotion from the far end of the room. Someone was being dragged from the poker table. There were shouts of "Cheater! Kill him!" The men took the cheater out the door. They were closely followed by a very angry-looking Chief Sandoval. Taking the opportunity, Bella grabbed one of the random men standing nearby and leaned on him drunkenly and asked if he would take her to her room. She was so plastered. The man could barely stand up straight himself. He slurred out which way to her room and how he'd like a gift for being her shining knight. Bella half-walked, half-carried the man after Sandoval. They were headed towards storage, near where the dogs were. Apparently her arm candy for the time being was named John, weirdly fitting. They stumbled awkwardly. John kept trying to touch Bella, stop her, but she just kept Sandoval and his goons in sight. Ultimately, they wound up walking past the dogs, the guards, and into stowage. She could barely see them, only the men standing guard and the men that had dragged the cheater away. She could hear the sickening thuds of someone being beaten bloody. The cheater was screaming and crying, swearing he would never do it again, and Sandoval yelling back that he would be an example for the rest. They have a zero-tolerance rule for cheaters. Strange as it was, Bella flashed on the night when she was 14. The men that accused her father of cheating. She knew how this would end. John was getting especially handsy now. He'd assumed they had stopped so he could have her way with her. Not sure what else to do, she called out to the guards for help. The men standing watch only looked in her direction, but waved for the guards to go to her aid. The guards came over and asked what the problem was. She told them that he refused to pay her and was going to find someone else, but he wasn't taking no for an answer. The men grabbed John and threw him to the ground. They told him off for not paying such a fine woman for her services. Everyone's got to eat. The other men standing guard for Sandoval were laughing at the whole thing. The dogs were barking pretty good at this point. Between that and all the commotion with John, It appeared that the cheater thought this was a good time to make a break for it. He came running past the two men as fast as he could. The two guards turned in time, though, and knocked him squarely down. Sandoval came walking out slowly. The cheater wanted to run, huh? Sandoval came over and straddled the man on the ground. The cheater's eyes were bloody and bruised. He was missing a couple of teeth and blood streamed from his mouth. He pleaded with the chief. He had a wife and kids. Please don't do this. The chief asked, if you had those things, then why are you here? You're a bad husband and a bad father on top of being a cheater of cards? Sandoval reached behind him and pulled out a knife. He quickly and easily stabbed the man several times in succession. The man screamed, then Bella screamed. They had all forgotten about her. The chief looked up in surprise. He looked closer, and it was at that moment he recognized her. He yelled for the men to grab her. Bella turned and ran as fast as she could. Still unsure of the layout, she just knew she had to get to the deck. Grab a lifeboat, life vest, anything. She had to get off the ship now. Bella bolted through the crowds of people, pushing and shoving anyone that got in her way. She hoped that the video of the dogs and Sandoval murdering someone made it to Amanda. She had no time to check. It was now or never. If she didn't make it off the boat, she was likely never leaving this area of the ocean. Sandoval and all the other men were shouting to grab her. More and more people joined in. It felt like there was a mob running her down. Dashing up the stairs as fast as she possibly could, her heart was beating out of her chest. Panic was setting in. The cold night air rushed over her. She ran to the boats, and there was no time to get one loose. She thought about just jumping, but with nothing to help her float, she feared the waters would claim her. Bella grabbed a life preserver. It was the only thing she could wrench free in such a hurry. She started running towards the rail. She was a decent swimmer, but she had no clue which direction to go in the dark. There was just an inky blackness below. Summoning everything she had, Bella took a deep breath and prepared to run and jump for it. Just as she was rearing back, she heard someone yell her name, Bella, over and over again. But it wasn't a voice she recognized readily. It was familiar. A younger man's voice. Bella stopped. Not many people knew her real name here. Likely only Sandoval, if he remembered it at all. She backed more slowly to the railing. The darkness obscured the face of whoever it was. But then he stepped under one of the lights on the side of the cabins. She sort of recognized him, but not exactly. He raised his pistol and told her, "Hello, big sister." It was Aaron. In a split second, she was frozen in place. The waves lapped against the boat as it rocked to and fro. The momentary silence was replaced by a gunshot. Pain ripped through Bella's shoulder, and she tumbled backwards overboard. The water briefly overtook the pain of the gunshot, but whether it was the water or the hole in her shoulder, shock took over, and Bella lost consciousness. Bella woke with a start. She was on a helicopter, being airlifted. She looked around, confused and shocked. The man in the white helmet next to her assured her that she'd be all right. They found her just in time. He told her how brave she was, that they'd been watching for a while. They actually saw her go overboard. Watching? Bella was so confused. The man pulled out his phone. "Hey, look at that! I'm on the stream!" On the stream, Bella could see the roof of the helicopter she was in, the rescuer next to her. Looking closer, she saw that Amanda had been streaming the entire time, and she tagged everyone. The Coast Guard, the FBI, PETA. There was over 100,000 people watching the stream. The man put his phone back away. He told her that her friends started it right when Bella entered the casino. They saw everything and tried to get out there as fast as they could. It was time for her to relax, though. It was all over. The bullet went through clean. She'll recover. Bella let herself lay down. The man gave her a pill to swallow of something that calmed her down immediately. She was feeling pretty damn good. Months later, Bella had a massive following online. There were trending hashtags still, Justice for Bella, Down with Dog Fights, and so many others. She used her following to help educate the public, to help the animal hospital. It was an amazing feeling to be able to help so many people and animals at the same time. Her and Amanda arrived at the same time to work. They chatted for a minute, then went to open for the day. There were no words to describe how much Bella owed Amanda, but she made sure she showed it every day. Chief Sandoval and Captain Carl were both behind bars, and pretty much everyone on the boat had been arrested. But she didn't notice Aaron's name in any of the arrest records. That didn't mean he wasn't. He could have been using a different name at this point, but she had to wonder. When they approached the front door, there was something laying there. It was a dog. It had clearly been mauled by another, but there was a note on it. It had just one word: Bella. It was a message that this wasn't over, that it would never be over. Fine. Bella was ready. These idiots didn't realize this was the worst thing they could have done. Aside from having an army behind her and the authorities supporting her, Bella had something that every single abuser and dogfight trainer should be deathly scared of. A single-minded focus to accomplish a goal. And now they've given her a new goal: to find whoever did this. This was not the end for Bella, but it was the beginning of the end for whoever thought this would scare her away. Well, thank you for watching this Friday Makemup, the veterinarian, the captain, and the dog. I know this was kind of a difficult one for people that care about animals like myself. This is just the way it went. So, what would you have written? How would you have taken those prompts and those comments? What kind of story would you have made? I'm very curious to know. My stories do tend to be more bleak than most, but hey, here we are. I did enjoy writing it. So, in the end, thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And until next time, I've been Yarn with I Just Want to Tell You a Story.